are here, boys and girls. Welcome to the week one of the Cleveland Browns preview show. And yes, it is me, G. Bush, with John Kosko. But John Kosko, what you got on there, dog?
Just a Baker bro here. That's all, just a Baker bro. Why wouldn't I support Baker?
I mean, you broing it out. I mean, listen, you got listen. Did you get that off the Kohl's rack, or was that one of yours that you had from a couple of years back, my G?
Unfortunately, it was from a few years back. At least I didn't pay for it. It was a gift.
Yes. So to commemorate your Baker broness, at any point in time, did you consider yourself a Baker bro? It's a thing where you have to go to counseling sometimes to really figure out if you're in a cult, or if you are like in an abusive relationship, or if you are supporting a quarterback that's not good. At any point in time, did you believe that you were in a Baker bro?
I definitely wasn't a Baker bro. I was a big Baker fan coming out of college, but I'm like objective of what he is and isn't on the field. And he showed what he wasn't on the field, and he showed he was kind of up and down type guy. I thought he could like lead the Browns to, consistent quarterback play, but I think last year kind of really solidified that for me. And, there's the excuses that people make because of the shoulder injury and all the injury stuff that he had. But then you get Jimmy Garoppolo, who had a shoulder injury as well on his throwing shoulder, and led them to the NFC Championship game because his teammates rallied behind him and loved him, versus Baker just alienating his teammates and throwing people under the bus.
Well, he does have his T-shirts out, but this week he'll be taking on his old team, the Cleveland Browns. It's a 1:00 kickoff game in Carolina. And this game, to me, I know week one games aren't a must win, but I can't do it. I cannot, because guess what? You wore that shirt, and the Baker Bros will be back at it if we do not come out here and get a win. Looking at it from Jacoby Brissett perspective and Baker Mayfield, I believe that Baker Mayfield is the better quarterback coming into this matchup between Jacoby Brissett and Baker Mayfield. How much of an advantage do the Carolina Panthers have?
The Browns have a better roster overall, but I mean, it's a quarterback league, and it's driven by good quarterback play. And if Baker plays lights out, and because he's got this chip on his shoulder, and he's really motivated against his former team, there's not much that really a defense can do if he's on point. Remember, we've seen it before from him where he can play at an extremely high level, and we really don't get that from Jacoby Brissett. He's a guy that's going to have a capped ceiling to his play. He can run an efficient offense, but he's not going to be a guy that's going to carry your team and put him on his back. And Baker isn't going to be that on a long-term basis, but he can do that for individual games, and we've seen that. Like, he did it against the Bengals last year in Cincinnati. He did it 2 years ago against Cincinnati in Cincinnati. And I think you can get that from him. So yeah, the Baker Mayfield is, has like a variance, a greater variance than what you get from Jacoby Brissett. I know that you can get like just a disaster of a game if the Browns can throw stuff at him that he has no idea what he's seen before. And, you've seen that with literally last year where, he had a great game against the Bengals, and the next week he put it into the tank against the Patriots a week later. So I think which side of that you're going to get out of Baker Mayfield, we will find out if Joe Woods can put together a package that confuses Baker.
And we'll talk about this a little bit later on in the game plans of what they need to do to get a win. But, do you believe that it's imperative to, for Joe Woods to get some pressure on Baker Mayfield to make him uncomfortable in the beginning?
Oh, absolutely. And we've seen it throughout this time in Cleveland that he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league when pressured. And so if you can get pressure on Baker, he's going to make mistakes. And so I think Joe Woods is going to do absolutely everything he can to get pressure on Baker. And then also do some confusing looks on the back end.
When you look at Jacoby Brissett, you take a look at what he's good at. He's a guy who doesn't turn the football over. He's pretty efficient when it comes to not putting the ball on the ground. I think he can get you into the right play. I think he can make certain throws. When you're looking at Jacoby Brissett, what is imperative that Kevin Stefanski has to do, and what type of game plan does he put around Jacoby Brissett in order for him to come out and be the most efficient that he can be?
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a good rushing attack and protect him. I think he's not going to be a world beater when it comes to any sort of leading a passing attack for an offense. So I think the Browns need to kind of do what they've done for the past 2 years, which is run the ball extremely well and protect the quarterback extremely well. And I think he will be just fine. You look at throughout the rest of his career, he's never graded extremely well in a season. He's basically in the upper to low, upper 50s to low 60s in terms of his career average. But then last year, he for some reason had a 74 grade, which was his best season. He's not going to be a guy that's going to beat you with his arm, big time throws down the field. He will protect it decently well. He doesn't have a high turnover worthy throw rate. So he's a guy that's going to, you hope to be able to put it together an offense around him that can efficiently move the ball up and down the field. And that, when it comes to quarterbacks that don't move the needle for you, you have to do that with the run game and protecting him with play action and a good pass protection.
Sometimes you have to throw in order to run the football. Is this going to be a case where you may see them stack the box a little bit? And what adjustments do you think Kevin Stefanski has to do in order to keep the offense rolling and not get stagnant?
Yeah, the Browns' offense is good enough as a running attack that teams have to honor it, and they really commit people to the box. And so you see it time and time again with their outside zone scheme that they want to stop Nick Chubb. And, even if that means that quarterback's getting outside the pocket on that boot, which leaves guys open down the middle of the field on those deep crossers, that's what you got to do with Kevin Stefanski. They're going to commit those guys to that run because they are afraid of Nick Chubb. It's just, it really kind of shouldn't be from a schematic standpoint. It's like you should stop the pass and then respect the run. But the thing is, Nick Chubb can do that, and that offensive line can do that to you, where it just strikes fear into your hearts. So I think with him, move the pocket, do a lot of maybe some misdirection stuff. Stefanski is really good with a lot of motioning pre-snap and then moving guys around. So I think just kind of do what he's been doing the past couple of years. If you get a guy that can at least throw it accurately, you're going to be fine.
Well, we're going to take a quick short break here, but when we get back, we're going to move around the AFC North. There's some great games coming up. There's a division matchup that we'll be talking about as well, and we'll get your general thoughts on some of these matchups coming back. It's G. Bush, it's John Kosko on the Browns Preview Show. Welcome back to the Browns Preview Show. G. Bush and John Kosko. Week 1 is here. We talked a little bit about, Week 1, Baker Mayfield versus Jacoby Brissett. But you also got to keep and drill down on what's happening all around the AFC North. I think this is going to be one of the most competitive divisions. Jeff, thoughts on overall just in the AFC North? And I believe the AFC North is probably a little notch below the AFC West, but as far as a competitive nature and competitive and being a close division, which division where would you put the AFC North?
Yeah, I'd agree. AFC West is a stronger division than the AFC North, especially in the first 11 games when you don't have Deshaun Watson there as the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. And with the who knows what's going on with Pittsburgh and their quarterback situation. So I think when it comes to, what this division can look like if, say, Kenny Pickett becomes like, a first round type talent in the quarterback position, Deshaun Watson's playing, then you would say that they're pretty even in terms of what they can do. But I mean, you look at the AFC West, they've got a top 2 quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, a top 5 quarterback in Justin Herbert, top 5 quarterback in Russell Wilson, and then Derek Carr, who's a top 10 type quarterback. That's a tough division.
That's crazy.
And like, I would say that you could argue that all of those quarterbacks are better than Lamar. And I'd say that the best quarterback in terms of starting week 1 would be maybe Joe Burrow over all those guys except for Patrick Mahomes. So, and you could maybe make an argument that Joe Burrow could take that leap of going ahead of him too. So Deshaun Watson, when he's on the field, if you asked me last year before he took a year off, you would have said, yeah, he would be a guy in that same position that Joe Burrow's in now. So I think when Deshaun Watson comes back, then you're looking at that. But they also beefed up their defenses there, especially the Chargers, and with the addition of Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson at the cornerback position.
When you look at this, we got the Ravens and the Jets, right? It's going to be a 1 o'clock game. When you look at that game between the Ravens and the Jets, obviously I would pick probably the Ravens to win that game. The Jets are a team that, I think the Browns will face next week. But to me, I think this is a game Baltimore is going to win. I think when you look at it, Lamar Jackson should have a pretty good game. One thing I am interested in seeing is how well does some of the running game with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and a lot of those other guys, how do they get back on track with the run game and what Baltimore loves to do? What are you looking at in this game? And what do you think the Ravens will look like on the ground and some of the offense with Lamar Jackson?
I think they're going to try to go back to what they were doing really well in Lamar's MVP season, because I think the moves that they've made this offseason, they didn't improve at the wide receiver position, which is interesting. They got worse. They traded Hollywood Brown to the Arizona Cardinals, and they kind of more look towards bolstering that run game. They obviously drafted Tyler Linderbaum out of Iowa, one of the best center prospects we've seen in quite some time. I think for them, they're trying to bring back that they understand maybe Lamar is not the pure pocket. He can't be a pure pocket passer in this league, which, I mean, when you have Lamar as that type of athlete, you're not going to want to do that. You want to utilize the legs that he has. So I think for them, they're probably trying to look to try to replicate that MVP season where, with maybe just a better version of Lamar from that, which would be kind of a surprise. But he's got to get better as a passer, and I think with this game, it's a 7-point spread right now. The Ravens are favored. The X factor in this is Zach Wilson. Is he going to take the second-year leap and show, hey, why he was picked number 2 overall, or is it going to be just a marginally better, if not the same type of year that he had last year, and then it's going to be a disastrous year for the Jets?
It's all on the quarterback position with the Jets. Either he's going to take Zach Wilson's going to be the dude, or he's not. I like what they did in the draft, but at the end of the day, it's about the quarterback to see if he can make those guys really move. So we'll move on to the next game in the AFC North. You got the Cincinnati Bengals, and that game's a 1 o'clock game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. What are you looking forward to in this game, or what kind of themes and matchups are you looking at?
I mean, it's going to be what that offensive line for the Bengals can look like. It's a new offensive line, with a revamped offensive line, essentially, to where that was kind of the detriment for them in the Super Bowl last year. And what the Achilles heel of that team is that they had a bottom 5 offensive line. And now it should go from a bottom 5 to at least a middle of the pack unit, because protecting Joe Burrow is obviously key for them. And also being a better run blocking team will be key. And I think for them, that's, if he can be protected, it's going to be a long year for opponents against the Bengals, because that offense attack can be very deadly with Burrow, throwing it to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, with Joe Mixon catching passes out of the backfield and running it as well. So on the other side of things too, it'll be interesting to see what Trubisky can do as a starting quarterback for them. What we saw from him in Chicago was not great play. He was a mid-60s grading type guy, even in his Pro Bowl year, which he really didn't deserve. That was a really strong team that he had around him, for a few years there. And I think for Trubisky, it's, he's probably going to start up until their bye, probably at least 4 games. And then if they're sitting at like a 1-3 type record because of his play, I think you might see the rookie come in.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we will talk and we will get to Kosko's Power 5. So we'll talk about some of the best teams that he thinks power ranking wise so far to start the season. Obviously, probably won't end that way, but it's always fun to take a look at who you have in your power rankings to start off the season. We'll do that coming back. It's the Browns Preview Show on the Barbershop Network.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
this is one of those fun little exercises we'll do. We'll do this all throughout the season, not just with teams. We'll do it position rankings and groups. So this is John Kosko's power rankings so far. And we're going to talk about the teams, top 5 teams right now. We could start off with your honorable mention. Who would you have just outside the top 5 that you think has a really good chance of winning a title in 2022?
So teams just outside of top 5 for me, and maybe this will be a surprise, but I'll start it off with the Rams, who just did win the Super Bowl. But it's incredibly difficult to win back-to-back Super Bowls. And they have the 4th hardest schedule according to our numbers for the season. I would say that they're just outside of top 5.
All right, let's move on to number 5. Who's coming in at number 5 for your list?
Number 5 for my list, they're going to be the Green Bay Packers. As long as Aaron Rodgers is on that team, they're going to have a fighting chance. You could say they arguably got worse on offense, losing Devontae Adams, which is, you'd lose the best wide receiver in football. It's makes you a little bit worse of a team. I do like what they did in the draft. They addressed that position twice, early on with Christian Watson, later on with Romeo Doubs. And they bolstered that defense too with a couple of good draft picks there. So I'd still put them as a contender for the Super Bowl for sure.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers just always seems to find another receiver he could throw to, and then they end up leaving and going somewhere else. So I agree. I think they're still dangerous. It's a little disappointing. I want to see them do it in the playoffs, but on paper, they're a team that's going to be pretty good and something to contend with. Let's go to number 4.
I'm going to go with the Chiefs here. As long as Patrick Mahomes is that, similar to the Rodgers and the Packers, they lost a big time weapon, arguably the best wide receiver in football. But again, they had a really good offseason with drafting and some moves that they've made. I like George Karlaftis that they got in the first round. Sky Moore can be a really talented guy. So I think for them, they could be that, they could be in that contention for the Super Bowl again, because it's the Chiefs and it's Patrick Mahomes. And, you don't count those guys out until, we see them, Mahomes implode without Tyreek Hill. We haven't seen it, so I'm not going to say he's going to do that.
And Andy Reid too is a guy. Yeah. He just recreates himself. All those years in Philadelphia, and all those NFC Championship games, it always seemed that they played a little bit different. And I think he'll just recreate himself, and they'll still be a potent offense given the fact that they got Patrick Mahomes. Let's go to number 3. Who do you got at number 3 on the Power 5 rankings?
I'm going to put the Bengals here. Coming off their Super Bowl loss. They only got better this year. You're talking about Jamar Chase in his second year, T. Higgins in his third year, Joe Burrow in his third year, with a much better offensive line. And they were a team that caught fire in the second half of the season last year, and they rode that obviously into the Super Bowl. And like we talked about their defense earlier. Their defense is just, I'd say, vastly underrated. They're in contention for a top 10 type defense. And that's what you kind of need to win a Super Bowl. And it's not like the Rams ran it down them in the Super Bowl. You talk about they needed a game-winning drive in the fourth quarter to take the lead on the Bengals, and then the Bengals need to do the same. And because of the poor protection from them, they weren't able to do it. So I still think they're a team that can be. They're going to fight. With Joe Burrow, he can be. With this season, launch himself into essentially a top 2 conversation of a quarterback in the NFL if he can replicate what he did down the stretch last year. So I put them as number 3.
They got the offensive line better, which is a big piece of it. You got the experience, and I think if you want to look at skill positions from receivers to running backs to tight ends, I think you'd be hard pressed to not put the Bengals at top 3, right?
If not one, who's better than them at the wide receiver position?
Nobody.
It's hard to say that there's a better team.
Yeah. So that's at number 3. Let's get to number 2 on the Power 5.
I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills with this one. I think with them, it's Josh Allen, a third, talking about 2 back-to-back elite level type years. And the way he finished last year too was, on just another level, where in the playoffs, he created it like in the 95s or something like that, which is an insane, like back to 2 games back to back, and the fact that they didn't win, they had a lead against the Chiefs with 13 seconds left, and
come on,
didn't win the game. I don't know how you do that while they're
understand
kicking off. It's insane. So I think the Bills, it's gonna obviously it's gonna come down to the Bills, Chiefs, and the Bengals, and then the wild card would be the Browns when Watson comes in there. But I think it's gonna come down to those 3 teams with in the AFC of competing for to the AFC title. So I think the Bills have the best shot this year. They're the team that's been on the outside in from that perspective the last 2 years. And you get Tre'Davious White back. Gabriel Davis is really kind of coming on to his own for them, and you saw what he was able to do in the playoffs as well. And Stephon Diggs is just another elite level talent at the wide receiver position. So
they're another team that got all the ingredients, man. It's just and just to look at it, you would think that you wouldn't be able to be that elite because they don't really run the ball that much. But when you look at what Josh Allen does, they just run the quarterback and he never gets hurt. So they're okay with that, man.
he's like a better version of Ben Roethlisberger, essentially.
Yeah.
Like he's Ben Roethlisberger in the pocket with better rushing ability. When Roethlisberger was in his prime, essentially.
Yeah.
Because like Ben would be the same way, where these guys would just be you couldn't sack them in the pocket because they were just too big and strong. But Ben didn't have the rushing ability to go along with it. And Allen, you'd say Allen has a better arm and he can run it. So
that's scary, given the fact that Ben was a Hall of Famer with multiple championships. So, all right, let's get to number 1. Who's number 1 on the power rankings list?
Yeah, until this dude tells me he's not, I'm gonna go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady at number 1. Until this guy says that he's fallen into the tank, I'm not gonna doubt the guy. It's impossible to do so. Last year he was the 2nd highest graded quarterback again. Another top 3 type year for the dude. This late in his career, it's kind of insane. He's 45, 46 years old now. I think for him, it's until we see that decline, which the decline can happen like that. We saw it with Peyton Manning, where it's like he was at an MVP like all-time type level, and then in the middle of the 2014 season, it just started going down, and then 2015 was not great, and then for some reason they were able to win the Super Bowl that year, which is interesting because he had many better years and they didn't win this. He didn't win a Super Bowl. So I think for me, it's Tom Brady until he tells me otherwise, and I'm just not. And they added Julio Jones this offseason. You got Mike Evans. They got a great wide receiver core already. Until Brady shows me that he can't play, I would say that's not going to be a huge detriment to him.
Nah, I mean, I've seen him play with guys that work on garbage trucks or dudes that work at like Arby's or something. Like he gets 800 yards out of them guys. He'll be fine with whoever he has. He'll be totally. I don't even look at their receivers and skill positions that much anymore. So I agree. He's just a guy who's going to continue to do it, man. And I think it's going to be really interesting in the NFC if he can get back to the Super Bowl this year, because I think it's a little bit wide open for him. Not gonna lie. When we come back, we'll wrap up. We'll put a bow in this thing. We'll go behind enemy lines. We'll do offense. We'll do defense. We'll talk about the X factors, and we'll give you a final prediction for the game. It's G. Bush, John Kosko on the Browns Preview Show. All right, welcome back to the Browns Preview Show. G. Bush in the building. John Kosko for Pro Football Focus, as always, is with me. Defensively, what is the game plan that the Browns are gonna have to execute, especially when it comes to getting off to a hot start?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is giving Baker Mayfield looks that he's unsure of, because when that happens, he hangs on to the ball and is unsure of where to go with the ball and then takes sacks. From a back end standpoint, if you can lock down their receivers for just a little bit of time where they're not getting open, or he's not sure of what it is that the Browns are running. So like the main thing that the Browns run are cover 3 and cover 4 with also some cover 1 in there. Baker knows that, everybody knows that, but how you get to those types of coverages can vary. And if the Browns can show different looks in terms of how they get to those coverages, it'll confuse him on from what he's seeing on the back end. He's going to double clutch the ball. He's going to hold on to it a little bit longer, and that's going to allow Myles Garrett and company to be able to get sacks on the guy. So I think that's the key to the game for the Browns is, hey, we know what, Baker's going to look at his first read. If that first read isn't there, he's going to struggle to get off of that first read and be accurate, going to maybe the opposite side of the field or what have you. Myles Garrett and company have to get there quickly.
And, Joe Woods is a guy who traditionally doesn't want to blitz a lot. How frequently do you think the blitz will come, and is that going to be a big part of their game plan?
Yeah, I mean, until we see Joe Woods operating with more blitzes, then I would say that we're not going to see that, and he's going to just more mix it up, because he does do a good job of mixing it up on the back end, generally, and he allows his pass rush to get there. I think what you should do though is sprinkle in some of those safety blitzes, corner blitzes, just fire zone type pressures, because you're not going to expect that. You're not expecting that from Joe Woods. So again, like I say, do things that you're unexpected to be able to confuse a quarterback, and you play sound defense on the back end, on top of the play calls, and you'll be just fine.
All right, so let's get to the to your X factors on defense. Who's the X factor on defense that you really want to see that needs to show up in order for the Browns to be successful?
I'm going to go with Greg Newsome on this one. So I think we're going to see Denzel Ward always lock it down. I think Greg Newsome in his second season coming out, first round pick last year, played well, but then also had some inconsistencies as a rookie, as you'd expect. So I think for him, I want to see him step it up to another level and show why he was taken in the first round, and kind of solidify why he was taken in the first round. You saw the flashes last year and stuff, but I think for me, knowing that, hey, Denzel Ward is probably going to get DJ Moore a lot, but you also can see, hey, Greg Newsome, you can also take DJ Moore a lot too. Both guys are equally talented and good enough to take the number one wide receiver. It allow you to mix things up from a defensive scheme standpoint. So I think Greg Newsome for me is that guy.
I think I'm going to go with Jadeveon Clowney in this one. I think Myles Garrett will get a couple of sacks. I think he'll be really amped up to play Baker Mayfield. I just think it's going to come down to Jadeveon Clowney also putting that pressure on, also continue to keep his motor high and chasing Baker Mayfield. The Browns can get to Baker Mayfield, and if they do get to Baker Mayfield, there is ability to start to see a little bit of ghost right there with Baker. He'll give you a couple throws, and he'll start to clutch and double clutch and not throw on time. So I think it's going to be very important for Jadeveon Clowney also to apply pressure and to continuously always be in Baker Mayfield's face and ultimately in the back of his mind. When you take a look at the offensive side of the football, it's easy to say run the football, right? Everyone says run the football, just run it 60% of the time, you'll be good. What do you think you need to do as far as creativity goes in running the game? How are they going to get to the running backs, and what ways are going to be the most optimum to get the ball to Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb to be successful?
Yeah, one of the things we don't see a lot from Kevin Stefanski are shotgun runs. So typically when the Browns line up in shotgun, that they're passing it, and when they are under center, a lot, it's more of a, there's kind of uncertainty with that because there's a lot of the bootleg type stuff, but he, kind of goes on the side of running it. But I think when you're in shotgun, doing some runs from there, getting maybe both running backs out there at the same time in a split backfield type look, that would bring something new, a wrinkle to the defense hasn't seen from Kevin Stefanski offense. So I think from a schematic standpoint, doing a few things that you're just not accustomed to doing.
When you look at your X factors on the offensive side of the ball, who are you looking at?
I'm going to look at Amari Cooper. I think he was brought in to be the alpha guy in that wide receiver room and to show these young guys how it's done. And, we haven't seen him this preseason. We saw Jacoby Brissett, and, there's some struggles obviously there in that final preseason game. But for me, I think it's Amari Cooper and showing, hey, was he worth the cash that they've allotted to him? And obviously the trade compensation is like a massive win for the Browns. That's you've given up a fifth rounder for a starting wide, top type wide receiver in the NFL. Show the world why the Browns made that trade for you and why they're making paying you all that money, the millions of dollars. So I think for me it's Amari Cooper. We know he's a great receiver in the NFL. show it and make Jacoby Brissett look better than what he is.
Yeah. I'm gonna go. I'll go to Kareem Hunt. I've been saying this, and I'll stay on it. To me, they don't have very many receivers that are experienced, or guys that I think you can count on in terms of just being like, hey, I'm gonna throw the ball and he's gonna catch it. But one of the guys that you can throw the ball to is Kareem Hunt. You can run the ball with Kareem Hunt. He can block. He can do a lot of different things. I think this year is going to be imperative that Kevin Stefanski utilize Kareem Hunt like he's a top back. Sometimes I think he just uses him like he's some second string guy. Like, oh, we're going to get a couple touches here or there and whatever he gives us. No. If the Browns want to be the best they can be this year, I think they're going to have to utilize, and Kareem Hunt's going to have a good year. David Njoku's going to have a good year. Some of those guys that, you may have not counted on in the past, you're going to definitely have to lean on and utilize them in creative ways. So I got Kareem Hunt. With that being said, let's go ahead and get to predictions. Predictions for the game. What are your thoughts? And do the Browns come up with a dub?
Yeah, I think they do. And the spread right now is in favor of the Panthers by 2.5, and the Browns are, I think, the better team. And from a power ranking standpoint, for what we have, which is interesting, we have the Panthers as the worst team in the NFL and the Browns as the 16th best team. And that's considering Jacoby Brissett is your starting quarterback. We have the Browns with the number 1 defense in the NFL, which is interesting. And still the Browns with the 15th best offense. So the Panthers, from a talent standpoint, across the board, don't touch anything that the Browns have. The one advantage they have is that, like, Baker Mayfield, if he comes and plays well and plays at like a career norm, like just a career average for them, which would be like an upper 70s type grade, which would be just above average type guy, which he can do. He absolutely can do that. And we've seen him, play extremely well. That'll be a factor in the game. But I do think that the Browns should come out on top here. I'm probably going to go with something like, 24-20 or something like that.
I'm gonna go with my prediction is I'm gonna go with 21-17 Browns win. It's not an ugly win. Baker doesn't play horrible or wet the bed or anything. I just think he plays like Baker, and I think the Browns find a way to get a couple of plays. They run the football, they don't turn the ball over, and I think they get out of there with a win.
We both have them as a 4-point victory, so we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens, man.
I don't know why they didn't pick the Panthers with me being a Baker bro.
Hey, you were the most rational Baker bro I've ever had a show with right now. Like you didn't even seem like a Baker bro. No,
because I was.
Because you weren't.
It wasn't. Oh man, I mean, from we're Browns fans, and we obviously hope that our quarterback does well, but I'm also objective. When he starts sucking, I go, listen, maybe he's not actually it.
Listen, I can always listen. If you could get a divorce to regular people in real life, I'm sure I can say my quarterback's not good anymore. Like, no, I don't like you anymore. Like, you're not that good. Are you going to keep that after this podcast, or what are you going to do? Are you going to keep it just for giggles, or are you going to start to use that as something to like, clean up, dog stuff or something?
It's been hanging in my closet for forever. I probably wore this maybe 1 or 2 times. Maybe I maybe wore it in the playoff game or something like that.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a jersey wearer or anything like that, and I'm not gonna just destroy something just because,
Yeah, it's like
it's not my style. So it probably just stay in my closet, and that he brought. I mean, for one, Baker did bring some good memories to Cleveland. I think that's you win a playoff game against the Steelers. That's something. No matter how much of it was on the defense causing 5 turnovers, Baker played well in the game. He put you in the playoffs. He got you the NFC, the divisional round game, something that the Browns haven't seen in forever. So, I think it's sad how it all ended up, and he's not the guy or whatever. But move. I'd say for the Baker Bros, move on. Just get. If you want to go be Panthers fans now, go be Panthers fans.
Okay.
It's fine.
That's okay. They're not winning either. So, it's a push to some people, right? You might not think we winning. But I think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of true Browns fans that kind of got over it. And I think the Baker Bro syndrome is kind of waning a little bit. We got 2 wins for the Browns according to these guys. We'll see how it takes place. We'll check you back same place, same time. It's G Bush, John Kosko for the Browns Preview Show on the Barbershop Network.